Snowflakes drifted lazily through the gray morning sky, each one landing gently on the worn gloves of an old woman sitting beside the entrance of a small bakery. Her fingers trembled as she tried to sip from a cup of lukewarm tea, its warmth long gone in the biting December air. People hurried past her, heads down, coats pulled tight, scarves wrapped high, as if the cold made them blind. Her name was Lila, and for most of her 72 years, she had known what it meant to work hard, to care, to love quietly. But life had a strange way of taking from those who gave the most. Her husband had passed 5 winters ago, her small apartment had slipped away to unpaid rent, and her only son had moved to another city, lost in his own battles. All she had left now was a small cart of trinkets, knitted scarves, handmade pins, and a faded photograph of a younger woman smiling under the same snow that now fell around her. Across the street, inside the warmth of the bakery, a young man named Ethan pressed his palms against the counter, waiting for his coffee. He was 28, a graphic designer, and lately, he had been living in the kind of fog that no cup of coffee could clear. Deadlines, broken relationships, and the feeling that his life had begun to blur into endless repetition left him hollow. When the barista handed him his drink, he noticed her eyes flicker toward the window. "She's been there all week," she whispered, nodding toward the woman outside. Ethan followed her gaze. The old woman looked fragile, her frame hunched, her face wrinkled in that way time writes its stories. For a moment, his chest tightened, but he turned away, muttering to himself, "Someone else will help." That night, as the city lights shimmered like frost on the river, Ethan lay awake. He couldn't shake her image, those trembling hands wrapped around a cold cup, those eyes that seemed to hold entire winters of loneliness. He thought about his grandmother, who used to tell him, kindness isn't something you give when it's easy. It's something you do when it's needed. The next morning, as snow began to thicken, Ethan stopped by the bakery again. Lila was there, sitting in her same spot, her breath visible in short, white clouds. He bought 2 hot teas and a small loaf of bread, then stepped outside. "Good morning," he said softly, crouching beside her. Lila looked up, startled but smiling faintly. "Oh, morning, dear. I'm afraid I can't buy anything from you." Ethan chuckled lightly. "Good thing I'm not selling. I just thought you might like some tea." Her eyes softened as she accepted the cup. "You're kind. Most people walk faster when they see me. They think I'll ask for something." He hesitated. Maybe they just don't know what to say. She took a sip, her hands trembling. Silence says enough. For a few minutes, they sat together, watching the snow fall. The world around them moved fast, cars sliding by, people rushing to work, but in that small moment, time seemed to pause. When he finally left, Lila whispered, "Thank you for noticing." Ethan didn't know then how much those words would echo in him. Over the next week, he began to stop by every morning. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes soup. Once, he brought a thick blanket, blue like the winter sky. They talked about little things, her love for knitting, his struggles with his job, her late husband's habit of humming whenever it snowed. Slowly, a bond formed, built not on grand gestures but on small, consistent warmth. One morning, Ethan noticed that her hands were shaking more than usual. "Lila, are you feeling okay?" he asked. She smiled weakly. "It's just the cold. It always finds its way in." Without thinking, he took off his gloves and slipped them over her frail fingers. "Here," he said. "No, dear," she protested softly. "You'll freeze." "I'm fine," he said. "Besides, you need them more." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "You remind me of my son," she murmured. "He used to do the same, always worrying about everyone else." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Where is he now?" She hesitated, then looked away. "Somewhere far. I think life took him where I couldn't follow." He wanted to ask more, but something told him not to. Some silences deserved respect. Days turned into weeks. The holiday season painted the city with lights and laughter, but for Lila, the cold only deepened. One morning, when Ethan arrived with a bag of pastries, her spot was empty. The bench looked oddly bare, dusted in untouched snow. He waited, thinking she might just be late, but as hours passed, unease grew inside him. The next day, still no sign. He asked the bakery owner, who shrugged sadly. "She hasn't been here since Tuesday." I hope she's all right. Ethan couldn't let it go. That evening, he walked the nearby streets, asking if anyone had seen her. Finally, a florist a few blocks away said, "The old woman with the trinkets. An ambulance took her 2 days ago. Poor thing collapsed outside my shop." His heart sank. "Do you know where they took her?" "St. Mary's Hospital, I think." The next morning, Ethan arrived at the hospital, carrying a small bouquet of winter flowers. He found her in a quiet ward, lying beneath a thin blanket, an oxygen tube resting against her face. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard his voice. "Hey," he said gently, pulling up a chair. "You didn't tell me you were planning a vacation." She smiled faintly. "Ah, you found me. I thought I'd disappeared into the snow." "You can't disappear on me yet," he said. "I still owe you tea." She chuckled weakly, the sound fragile but full of warmth. "You're too kind, Ethan. But don't worry. I'm not afraid of the cold anymore." He stayed with her that day, reading from a book he'd brought and listening to her stories of her youth, how she once danced barefoot in the rain, how she and her husband used to share one umbrella and pretend it was enough for both. When visiting hours ended, she squeezed his hand. "You know," she said softly, "the world can be cold, but kindness is like holding someone's hand even when yours are freezing. It reminds you you're still alive." Her words stayed with him long after he left. A week later, when he came back, her bed was empty. For a moment, he froze, until a nurse gently told him she had passed away peacefully that morning. He sat down in the hallway, staring at the floor. The flowers he'd brought hung limply in his hand. That night, Ethan returned to her bench. The snow had fallen thick, muffling every sound. He placed the flowers on the seat and sat beside them, his breath rising in the frigid air. He remembered her laughter, her trembling hands, her quiet courage. The next morning, he found himself at the city shelter, speaking to the director. "I want to start something," he said. "Something small. Maybe a fund for warm clothes and food for the elderly on the streets." The director smiled. "That's a beautiful idea. What will you call it?" He looked down at his hands, remembering hers, thin, shaking, but always offering a smile. "The warmth behind cold hands," he said. Word spread slowly at first. Ethan began designing small flyers, then a website, sharing Lila's story, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder of the power of seeing someone. Donations trickled in, then poured. Volunteers joined. The project grew beyond anything he imagined. They handed out gloves, blankets, and warm meals through the city's coldest nights. But more than that, they listened. Years passed, and every winter, Ethan returned to that same bench. He'd sit with a cup of tea and whisper, "I kept my promise, Lila." One evening, as he watched volunteers handing out blankets nearby, a young girl, maybe 10 years old, approached him. "Mister," she said shyly, "my mom says you help people who are cold. Why do you do it?" He smiled. "Because someone once helped me understand that cold isn't just about the weather. Sometimes, it's in our hearts. And when you warm someone else's, your own never freezes." The girl thought about that, then nodded. "Can I help too?" "Of course," he said, handing her a pair of gloves to give away. "Start with these." The little girl ran off, her laughter bright against the snow. Ethan watched her go, his heart swelling with the kind of peace he hadn't known in years. That winter was harsh, but in small corners of the city, warmth bloomed, in shared meals, in held hands, in the quiet kindness of strangers. And though the old bench eventually wore down, the plaque that Ethan placed there remained. For Lila, who showed the world that even the coldest hands can hold the warmest heart. As snow began to fall again, Ethan closed his eyes and thought of her. Somewhere, in the gentle whisper of the wind, he could almost hear her humming, a soft, wordless tune that felt like home. Because sometimes, the greatest warmth doesn't come from fires or blankets. It comes from the people who choose to care, those who reach out, even when their own hands are trembling. And in that, the world finds its gentlest light, the warmth behind cold hands.